A tsunami advisory does remain in effect for parts of California right now and the border region with Oregon as a result of that massive quake in Russia. There have been dozens of aftershocks as well since, measuring a magnitude 6.0, which is in and of itself quite strong. The initial massive quake had people running for cover from Russia to Hawaii. There was some damage, but there are no reports of casualties. This morning's earthquake off the coast of Russia is one of the strongest recorded in the region. Earlier, I spoke with the mayor of Hawaii County, Kimo Alameda, and he told me it was all hands on deck, but thankfully everyone there was prepared.
We've been hit with tsunamis, and in 1960, 1952, 1957. So we grew up hearing stories, and so we're very much prepared. We have tsunami drills, and we totally are engaged, federal, state, county officials. We know what to do. And once we got the all warning sign, we were all hands on deck and we started implementing our emergency plan.
CBS News correspondent Jonathan Vigliotti joins us now from Malibu, California this morning. Jonathan, good morning again. You know, the worst of this is past, but, plenty of surfers catch waves where you are because of the topography. How risky is it for anyone who wants to get into the water on the West Coast today?
Yeah, the risk continues, but what I think is notable is just how strong this earthquake was. It was the sixth strongest ever recorded. We can now confirm more than 100 aftershocks. And given all of that power, it's incredible there wasn't more damage caused and that the waves that were projected never arrived in their entirety. Here in Los Angeles, we're talking measuring around half a foot. Hawaii just under 6 feet. For the first time in more than a decade, officials there on the islands sounding their sirens. It led to moments of panic where we saw people, thousands of them, scrambling to get to higher ground, moments where bumper to bumper traffic, people waiting for hours. Though now we can say there is a sense of relief. The evacuation orders, they have been lifted. The downgrading now of this warning to an advisory is also comforting news. There was some flooding primarily in the harbors on the islands. Here in Los Angeles, we didn't experience any damage, but the coast is still not literally clear, both for Hawaii and here along the West Coast, especially here in Malibu where we are. Officials are urging those that are going to the beach to stay out of the water. The big concern right now, riptides and dangerous surge, Errol.
All right, Jonathan Vigliotti in Malibu. Thank you, Jonathan. But we want to give you some context on these tsunami concerns because you'll see these stories on your social feeds all morning. So we want to bring in Dr. Stefan Grilli. He's a distinguished professor of ocean engineering at the University of Rhode Island. Thank you and good morning to you, Dr. Grilli. Help us understand the level of seriousness. Are we now past the point of maximum tsunami danger? And if so, what risk is left for Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast?
Well, we don't know yet if the brunt of the tsunami has passed by. It could create waves for up to 24 hours, so we still need to be careful. But in Hawaii, they have downgraded the alert, so they're fairly confident probably that the main waves have reached Hawaii, but the tsunami continues its way towards other areas, particularly also South America. It has also impacted California. Some areas in Northern California, like Crescent City, have seen up to 6 foot of flooding.
And I think it may be challenging for people as well to really comprehend the size of what truly is a global event. 8.8 is a massive magnitude. Put that into context for us and perhaps compare it to previous earthquakes we may be familiar with. It's a massive amount of force.
Right. So the most recent large earthquake was in Japan in 2011. It was magnitude 9. And so this one is quite close to that level. But in 1964, Alaska was hit by magnitude 9.3, 9.4. The magnitude is not really a scale of 10. When you go up in magnitude by 1, you actually go up in energy by 33. So going from 8.8 to 9.3 was probably about 10, 15 times more energy. But this one in Kamchatka, 8.8, is up there with some of the largest quakes in the region. It is an enormous amount of energy that's released by the movement of the seafloor, and that seafloor is moving the water, and then the water propagates all over the ocean, in this case, the Pacific Ocean.
That's right. As those numbers increase, it's an exponential jump in the amount of energy released from the Earth. What are some of the other risks? Of course, people think of water rushing ashore, flooding. But for people who live along coastal communities like the U.S. West Coast, what risks will exist for the next 12 to 24 hours?
Right. So the main risk is going to be strong currents, particularly in harbors and marinas, any kind of narrow river mouths. So you have to be very careful, because even with a little bit of elevation, the tsunami moves a lot of water in and out multiple times. We've seen that in 2011, Crescent City suffered millions of dollars of damage by boats breaking off their anchors and hitting each other and so forth. The situation today could repeat itself in Crescent City, but also in many other ports and marinas along the West Coast.
Yeah, that's an important warning, and folks should stay on alert. There's still the risk of aftershocks, which can also carry their own power. Dr. Stefan Grilli, we appreciate you joining us from Rhode Island this morning.
We want to get back over to our meteorologist, Amber Lee, for our continuing coverage of the tsunami advisory, which was just dropped in the last hour. Amber?
All right, so Kalina and Chris, I have Todd Hall here on our live interview with him. He is a senior meteorologist with National Weather Service, and we've been talking all morning, Todd. And so let's talk about the tsunami advisory that was canceled, because it was canceled just after 5 this morning. It was a little bit surprising, especially because we still have that tsunami advisory to the north of us in Santa Barbara County.
Yeah, conditions dropped below the advisory criteria, which is a foot of the tsunami swell. So they ended up and let that advisory go. But as far as the rest of the day, I mean, if you're looking to go to the beach today, I mean, you're going to see strong rip currents. Probably would be best to stay out of the water today, because we're looking at these strong rip currents. If you're planning on boating, it's probably not a good day, because we're going to see some strong currents continuing in our harbor. So even though they've dropped this advisory, we're still going to see a lot of these local impacts affecting Southern California.
Now, what do you have to say to some folks who probably thought that maybe giving out a tsunami advisory was a little too much? Do you think that they should still, like you mentioned, there's still going to be strong rip currents, but should everybody let their guard down whenever we see tsunami warnings or advisories?
I've worked several of these tsunami warning events across Southern California, and everyone brings a different wrinkle. So I can honestly say that even though we have so many little nooks and crannies in Southern California, a very complex topography that we have along the Southern California coast, and so we have conditions where just last night we were advertising the possibility of local tsunami warning conditions up along the central coast of California. So we have these harbors that are very prone to this, like Ventura Harbor. Some of our beaches are very prone to tsunami currents as well. So we need to stay vigilant and just listen to authorities. If they're telling you not to go in an area, let's trust their guidance.
Yeah, and especially because this was such a big earthquake that we saw coming out of Russia. Now, let's talk about Ventura Harbor, because you touched upon it right now. You were saying some of the outliers. So there's still places that you're watching, even though we don't have the tsunami advisory like Ventura Harbor, correct?
Yeah, so Ventura Harbor and practically almost all the last 5 tsunami tsunami events we've had, they've been very active and have responded to a lot of these. So we're very much in touch with the Ventura Harbor Master and keeping them in close contact with us while we go through this, because this is not going to just happen today. It could happen for the next 3 days. It's, when you think about it, it's like the water in a bathtub, and it just sloshes back and forth across the Pacific. So we're going to continue to see these currents affecting Southern California for the next couple of days.
All right. Thank you so much for that insight.
Joining us now is Krista von Hillebrandt, the Deputy Director of the International Tsunami Information Center. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Hi. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So, I think once we saw the tsunami warning come out, at first it was, just kind of an advisory, and then it became a warning. People got really anxious here in Southern California. Can you talk about what the system is and how it's laid out for here on the West Coast?
Yeah, so first thing that we do is we calculate the magnitude of the earthquake. And so based on the magnitude of the earthquake and its location, then we have an idea of how serious the impact might be. So we'll put out a message, for a certain area. And then once we get the first reading from the DART, these are stations that we have, subsea stations, then we're able to actually do a tsunami, actually able to model what we think will happen with the tsunami and forecast the wave heights. And so then once we have that, then we're able to make these, for places large away, depending on what we forecast in wave heights, if, we're expecting, more than 3 feet, then we'll put them into a warning, because that means that there could actually be flooding. But in other areas where what the forecast shows between 1 and 3 feet, then, then we just expecting currents and we'd put them under an advisory. But then as more data comes in, then we'll be changing. We could either upgrade or downgrade the alert based on the observations and further modeling and knowledge about the earthquake itself.
Right, and of course that's what we saw here as that warning got canceled for our area. Of course, for people not along the coast or visiting an area they weren't familiar with, they were very scared about this warning. How does this compare to ones in the past? Was it alarming to you?
Well, I'm located in Puerto Rico, so obviously I'm outside the danger zone. So I'm at the ITIC office, and I manage the tsunami warning system for the Caribbean. So I've been supporting the effort. But yes, to be in Hawaii, and to see a tsunami warning, what some people might not realize is, yes, the tsunami warning was issued for the whole island. But if you go in the islands, but once you go into the product, then we could also see that the forecast would vary across the islands. But the operating procedures, the issue, islands wide. So yes, I think if you've never experienced a tsunami and all of a sudden you see a tsunami warning and you understand that could be meat and flooding, that could be an initial scare. But the authorities know what to do and they just take precautions. You just better be safe than sorry.
I do think some people automatically think of a giant wave coming at them when you hear tsunami. When we're here in Southern California, can you talk about, there are differences into how tsunamis end up impacting coastlines?
That is correct. You have like what we had in Japan in 2011, right? Where it's like walls of water, 40 meters high coming in, and that's obviously a lot of flooding. But those are really, really big extreme cases. In this case, at the beginning, for those areas closest to the epicenter, they were thinking maybe 10 meters, which is still a lot of water. But, most of the time what happens, especially when you're far away from the tsunami, you don't have any strange offshore bathymetry like the case of Crescent City, then what you really have is just really strong currents. And that's when we issue this advisory level. That was something that the National Weather Service introduced like over 20 years ago to distinguish between these waves, big waves causing inundation, for which we issue a warning, versus then these other lower level threat messages, which are an advisory. And it's basically a call to marina. We've seen a lot of millions of dollars of damage, in Santa Cruz and Crescent City, different places along California. But, it's just from those really strong currents that sometimes accompany these earthquakes and tsunamis.
And I will not be swimming or surfing today.
Yeah, no,
that's a very bad idea.
Exactly.
And one very important thing is to note that, just because up the coast or in Seattle there was no impact, that doesn't mean that in California there could not be an impact, because the tsunami is guided by the bathymetry of the ocean. So, for example, Crescent City always gets very large waves. It's just because of that offshore bathymetry. Maybe San Jose, San Luis, they have these things. So you have to be really, really careful and not say, because in Alaska nothing happened, which is closer to the epicenter than I am in California, we're safe. No, that is a big mistake. You really, the Weather Service says that there's a possibility of dangerous currents. There is that possibility. We're seeing data that indicates that's a possibility. If we're saying there's a warning, it's that we got the data, we got the modeling, it's showing there could be inundation. So don't go with what's happening on your neighbor, go with what the message says for the area where you live, you work, or you spend your time.
I think that's an important message. Krista, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.